Hello and welcome to The Matchup, presented by Shell Polymers, alongside Dale Lolley and Matt Williamson, who you can listen to on The Drive. I'm Rob King. We're getting you ready for Week 1 of the 2024 season between the Steelers and the Falcons, which will take place this Sunday at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Guys, obviously everybody in Steeler Nation is extremely excited, and when you look at the offense, there were a lot of changes in the offseason, so a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknowns about what this offense is going to look like.
Yeah, new offensive coordinator in Arthur Smith, new quarterback room, completely new there as well. And so, you know, one of the big things that you wanted to see in this preseason was what's this going to look like? Well, I don't know that we got to see that in the preseason. We did get to see it some in practice settings, out at St. Vincent College and things of that nature. But, I think a lot of fans got kind of caught up in the preseason games thinking, is this what the offense is going to look like? I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, I got a lot more out of practice than I did the 3 games, particularly that joint practice with the Bills.
Yeah.
And it's going to look a lot different than what you saw in the preseason and what you saw last year in particular. Heavier personnel, extra tight ends on the field, maybe a fullback here and there. You mentioned the personnel changes. The offensive line is going to have different people as well. Quarterback play is going to be noticeably different, the way that what they ask of those guys as well. So I'm excited about the offense.
Yeah, so the Steelers obviously have had their changes. So have the Falcons. New head coach, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, new quarterback for them, surrounded by some of the same personnel. We're going to get to the Falcons' offense against the Steelers' defense coming up in just a little bit. But let's look at the key matchups when the Steelers have the ball. Dale, let's start with you. George Pickens against their corners. Presumably, he's going to see a lot of A.J. Terrell, who just signed that huge contract extension, 4 years, $81 million.
Yeah, and Terrell is kind of one of the more lesser-known star cornerbacks in the league. I think he's a really good cornerback. They do use him, at least they have in the past, to travel with the other teams, opposing teams' best wide receiver. We'll see if Raheem Morris, the new head coach in Atlanta, wants to do that with A.J. Terrell. Mike Hughes on the other side is a highly drafted guy that's kind of bounced around the league a little bit, but I would think that they would use Terrell against Pickens a lot. The safeties are good, so maybe they roll some safety help over the top of that as well and make the Steelers beat them with somebody else.
Yeah, Bates and Simmons, obviously, they're safeties. They added Simmons late. They added Bates before last season. We know him from his time in Cincinnati. That's a good duo of safeties. The Falcons, I don't know about their depth, guys, their overall depth, but their starting 11 looks pretty good on defense, including the corners and the back end.
I definitely think the secondary is the strength. Terrell's worth that kind of money. One of the better pairings at safety in the league. They've been looking for pass rush forever, and they're hoping they'll get it from Matthew Judon, who they just traded for as well. So they made 2 pretty significant additions to that starting lineup just recently.
Yeah, so my key matchup is center Zach Frazier against David Onyemata. Onyemata's been around in the league for a while. He's coming off what is probably his best season. This is going into his 9th season now. And Zach Frazier's a rookie starting his very first game. Onyemata's a high-effort guy. He's a good football player. They really like him there. Not that well known around the league, but he's a good player. They have a very rotational sort of defensive front. I think we're going to see a lot of guys playing for them because they don't have any true stars up front. But Onyemata, I think this is a guy who's going to be a very good first test for Zach Frazier.
Yeah, and I think because of that effort that you talked about, Zach Frazier is that same kind of guy. He's a high-effort guy. I think that kind of matches up well for him, that you'll have 2 high-effort guys in there as opposed to one of these nose tackles who's one of these 350-pound guys that's just going to try to bowl him over. We'll get to see that later in the season. So maybe this is a good first test for Zach Frazier.
And I was going to say, you don't want to have a lot of guard help there. You'd like to have him be able to take care of that, and then you can use the guards elsewhere to get out to their pretty good pair of middle linebackers and some of their other guys, maybe edge guys that you're going to be concerned about. You mentioned Judon. So I think this is an important matchup.
I think so too. And we know the Steelers are going to be young, particularly on the interior, next to Frazier. Anderson's going to probably be in there. And Onyemata's been around the block. He's a veteran, as has Grady Jarrett. So there's an experience factor there in that interior matchup that favors Atlanta.
Yeah, Jarrett's been a guy that's been to a couple of Pro Bowls for them over the years. So your key then is the 12 personnel and maybe some 3 tight end sets as well that the Steelers are going to use. You think right out of the chute maybe to hammer at this Falcons defense?
I just think you're going to see a lot of it this year. 1 back, 2 tight ends, 2 receivers, or as you mentioned, 1 back, 3 tight ends in Pickens. And a league-wide trend against 12 is about 2/3 of the defenses play nickel against 12. And it used to be, just a couple years ago, that was 25%. So you're seeing more and more nickel against 12. I think that's something to look at right out of the gates, because if the Steelers see nickel, I think they'll have a lot of success running the ball against 5 defensive backs.
Yeah, I think the size and the style that they want to play, this is an interesting matchup right out of the chute for them. A team that you would think maybe this 12, 13 personnel would match up well against.
Yeah, I think, as Matt said, so many teams in the league have gone to playing nickel against that 12 package, which I think is why teams want to get into that 12 package.
Yeah.
To force teams to either get big or small, and if they do get small, the Steelers will have an advantage here.
And then conversely, if they decide, well, we're going to play base against the Steelers 12, maybe I would take Washington out and put Hayward in. They're very different tight ends.
Right. And then, again, searching for those mismatches with Arthur Smith against this Falcons defense. Well, Yin's Chat regular season challenges are back. Answer trivia and predictive questions and compete against Steelers Nation for a chance to win a jersey autographed by TJ Watt. Remember to play every week for a chance to win the season-long grand prize. Up next, what are the key matchups for the Steelers D against a talented Falcons offense? We'll let you know on the matchup presented by Shell Polymers.
Want to get gear direct from the team? Shop all things black and gold at the official Steelers Pro Shop located at Acrisure Stadium. Get the latest sideline apparel and hats, jerseys of your favorite players, authentic memorabilia, custom gear, and exclusives you can only find here. Don't forget, you aren't game day ready without a terrible towel. The Steelers Pro Shop has everything you need to be part of the legendary Steelers Nation. Come experience the Acrisure Stadium shopping environment or shop online at shop.steelers.com.
By Shell Polymers, we're getting you ready for the Steelers and the Falcons Week 1 at Mercedes-Benz Stadium down in Atlanta. Steelers going on the road for the first couple of weeks. We just examined the Steelers offense against the Falcons defense. Now we're going to look at the Falcons offense against the Steelers defense. Before we get too far down the road in the matchups though, guys, the Steelers, again, as they did on offense, some changes. Patrick Queen signed, Dante Jackson traded for. Matt, overall, what do you think about the changes the Steelers made?
Team speed. I think that's the big overlying, theme to the defensive changes. And also, we were talking about personnel groupings just a minute ago. The Steelers have been very heavy in either base or dime, and now I think they're more equipped to play a lot more nickel.
Yeah, and one of the guys that you didn't mention there, Deshaun Elliott,
exactly,
also gives the Steelers the ability, as Terrell Austin told us this morning, to put Minkah Fitzpatrick back at free safety and let him roam the middle of the field, which I think is going to be a big thing for this defense. You need that guy taking the ball away.
I think that's a great point, because you talk about Patrick Queen, and I've made the point to people that you now have stars at every level. Cam Hayward just signed a new 3-year deal. Keanu Benton hopefully on the rise. We know about the outside linebackers. You had Queen on the inside. And now Deshaun Elliott seems like, can he be the Ryan Clark to Polamalu to Minkah Fitzpatrick here, to carry on that analogy? And how can that free up your playmakers to make more plays in this defense?
Yeah, and that's what they're looking for. I mean, they got no takeaways whatsoever from Minkah Fitzpatrick last year. It's the first time in his career that has happened, and yet the Steeler defense was still one of the best in the league at taking the ball away without your best guy adding to that at all. So if they can get something out of him this year, that helps the defense out tremendously, because they have guys that can take the ball away.
And Matt, team speed helps you take the ball away as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, just more tacklers to the ball. Fewer big plays allowed. Those tips that hang in the air a little bit, you get to a little quicker. And there's a pretty well-known saying that if you're slow at the linebacker position, your Mike linebacker, you have a slow defense. Well, Steelers aren't slow there at all anymore.
No, they're not. And Peyton Wilson, the young rookie, is a guy who can really run. Okay, so Dale, let's talk about the key matchups in this game. And your key matchup is the front sevens going against each other.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Steelers' front seven, it should be one of the best in the league. Where they're coming out of the gate against an offensive line and Jake Matthews, Matthew Bergeron, Drew Dahlman, Chris Lindstrom, and Caleb McGarry. that a lot of people consider one of the best offensive lines in the league, certainly a top 5 unit. So, this is strength against strength here in this game. And I think the team that wins that battle on strength probably wins this game.
A lot of stability and continuity to
Yes.
that Falcons line too, which is really important.
Yeah, we talk about that all the time. They've
Yeah.
been around together. It's one of the concerns, certainly, for the Steelers' offensive line in week
Right.
one. It's not talent. It's just that, you're putting new
How's it all
guys
gel
in there,
together,
and
yeah.
how's it all going to gel together? The other thing I think, too, Dale, when you look at this matchup, is that this is a front 5, talking about the offensive line for the Falcons, that is hoping to be able to protect Kirk Cousins. Huge upgrade at the quarterback position for them in signing Cousins to a massive offseason deal. They've got highly drafted guys, and if Cousins can have time, if the Steelers' front 7 can't impose their will on that offensive line of the Falcons, that's going to bode well for the Falcons' attack.
Absolutely, and Cousins is coming back off an Achilles tendon injury, so you want to try to get him moving off of his spot, and let's test and see how well that Achilles is healed.
He wasn't the most mobile of
Right.
starting quarterbacks to begin with, right?
So, Matt, let's get to your key, and it's Bijan Robinson. You talk about the Steelers' speed at the linebacker position and maybe the secondary as well. Bijan Robinson is a real handful. I mean, he just chews up yardage. He's so fast. He's a really, really skilled running back.
He really is, and it's going to be everyone's job to try to contain him because he gets well, at least in the former offense, he got an awful lot of targets. I think he's a very special player, and we could say the linebackers are responsible for him, and they will be some in coverage, but I don't think it's far-fetched. With all respect to Christian McCaffrey, as good as he's been, by mid-season, we're talking about this guy as the best running back in the league.
Yeah, I don't think that's
He's a special guy.
I don't think that's a stretch at all. I agree with you. And they've got, Algier as a backup, so they've got a good, solid, capable backup as well. So my key, a meaty subject. Okay, you guys know I was going there. Porter versus London, the Porterhouse versus the London Broil. Okay, I'm sorry I did that. Joey Porter Jr. against Drake London. Now, London was a guy selected 8th overall. He set a Falcons rookie record for most receptions in a season with 72. That was 2 years ago. Last year put up basically the same type of numbers. But make no mistake about it, they're expecting him with Kirk Cousins to be an elite receiver. They're expecting him to elevate his game so that by the end of the year, we're talking about him with some of the elite receivers in the league. So for Joey Porter Jr., who does follow around the opponent's top receivers, this is a big matchup. Not only that, when you start getting down to Darnell Mooney, it's been a couple of years since he's been effective. He's their number 2 receiver. There's a real drop-off. We talk a lot about that with the Steelers and the fear of what's going to be there after Pickens and can Jefferson and Austin and Miller and some of the other guys step up. Well, I think that these guys are talking about the same thing. It's Drake London for sure. Then after that, I think there's some uncertainty outside of Pitts at the tight end position. So in that receiving core, if Joey Porter Jr. can limit Drake London, that will go a long way for me toward limiting the Falcons' offense.
Absolutely, and Drake London was a top 10 pick. Kyle Pitts, who you mentioned, a top 10 pick in the draft, and Bijan Robinson, a top 10 pick in the draft. So they have some high pedigree guys in this offense, and that matchup between Porter and everybody hates the Drake, but that matchup is one that's going to be key.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned the receiver depth. They lost Rondell Moore, who they traded for. I think they're counting on him to be the 3. And this whole staff comes over from the Rams, and they've led the league in 11 personnel with 3 receivers on the field. I don't see 3 highly capable guys. So if you can at least limit what London does, that could go a real long way.
They only carry 3 tight ends in the roster. The Steelers carry 4. So just the roster makeup lets you know that these are different. 2 different styles of offenses that we're going to see. So the Steelers open the 2024 season at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, 1 o'clock this Sunday against the Atlanta Falcons. Thanks very much for watching. For Dale Lolley, for Matt Williamson, I'm Rob King. You've been watching The Matchup, presented by Shell Polymers.